Late at night, world finally goes quiet. Your mind often refuses to rest. Thoughts start moving on their own, wandering through every corner of your head, each one demanding your attention. You lie awake, eyes open to the dark, feeling that familiar pull of overthinking drag you in deeper. What began as a single thread of worry now spreads in every direction. A simple question turns into a chain of what-ifs. A decision becomes a maze of doubts. You trace and retrace your own steps. You keep circling back, trying to make sense of it all. But the harder you look for peace, the further it seems to slip away. Overthinking feels like trying to solve a riddle that has no answer. The mind, desperate for control, circles endlessly around problems, rehearsing outcomes, rewriting conversations, and analyzing emotions that have long since passed. It is the illusion of progress, a storm of thought that gives the sensation of movement but leaves you standing in the same place. And yet, this storm is not your enemy. It is a messenger whispering that something within you seeks peace. Philosophers across centuries have gazed into this restless phenomenon. The Stoics warned that our suffering often comes not from events themselves, but from the stories we tell about them. In ancient Greece, Epictetus taught that if we wish to be free, we must distinguish between what is within our control and what is not. Overthinking, in many ways, is an unconscious rebellion against this truth. It is the mind's attempt to control what was never meant to be tamed. In the East, Buddhist philosophy offered a different yet harmonious insight. The Buddha observed that attachment, our clinging to outcomes, identities, and expectations, creates suffering. Overthinking is a form of this attachment, a tightening of the mind's grip around ideas, fears, and possibilities. It is an anxious attempt to hold the future in our hands, forgetting that the future cannot be held at all. Modern psychology echoes these ancient voices. The human brain, wired for survival, evolved to anticipate danger. Overthinking was once a tool, a way to predict threats and ensure safety. But in a world where most dangers are psychological rather than physical, this tool often misfires. The mind's ability to imagine countless possibilities becomes a burden instead of a gift. To understand the way out of overthinking, we must first understand why we think so much in the first place. Thought is the mind's natural rhythm, but overthinking is thought without rest, reflection without resolution. It feeds on uncertainty and self-doubt, growing stronger each time we mistake worry for preparation. The more we think, the more anxious we become. The more anxious we become, the more we think. It is a feedback loop that traps us in our own awareness. But there is another way to see this. What if overthinking is not a flaw to be fixed, but a signal to be understood? Perhaps it is the psyche's way of saying that something deeper needs attention. A wound left unhealed, a truth left unspoken, or a desire long ignored. Like a child tugging on your sleeve, the overactive mind may simply be calling you back to yourself. Imagine standing at the entrance of a great labyrinth. The walls are high and endless, the path uncertain. Each turn looks like the last, and somewhere within lies the still center you've been searching for. To find your way out, you must first stop running. You must listen, not to the echoes of every possible path, but to the quiet pulse beneath it all. That pulse is awareness, the stillness behind the noise. In the chapters that follow, we will explore how to return to that stillness, not by silencing thought through force or suppression, but by learning to understand its patterns. You'll discover how fear, control, and the search for certainty give birth to overthinking. You'll meet the wisdom of Stoics, Buddhists, and modern psychology, all offering keys to the same ancient door. We'll move beyond an intellect into the territory of being. For the way out of overthinking is not a trick of logic, it is an art of surrender. So take a deep breath, feel the air move in and out of your body. Let each breath remind you that not everything needs to be solved, that not every thought deserves to be followed. Tonight, as we begin this journey, know that clarity is not found in the noise of the mind, but in the spaces between its thoughts. And there, waiting quietly, is the peace you've been searching for, the nature of thought, when the mind becomes the master. To understand how to free ourselves from overthinking, we must first examine what thought truly is. The human mind, perhaps the most intricate creation in the known universe, is both a marvel and a mystery. Thought is its language, its way of weaving reality from fragments of memory and imagination. But when that language becomes incessant, when the mind refuses to pause between words, we lose sight of what lies beyond thought itself. At its best, thought is a tool. It allows us to build civilizations, compose symphonies, and explore the stars. It bridges past and future, crafting meaning from experience. Yet, like a tool used carelessly, it can turn against us. When thought ceases to serve awareness and begins to dominate it, the tool becomes the master. Overthinking is that reversal, when the mind, meant to be our ally, takes command of the inner world and begins to rule through constant commentary. The philosopher René Descartes once wrote, "I think, therefore I am." His words became the cornerstone of Western rationalism, but they also planted a subtle seed of confusion. If being is tied to thinking, then what happens when we cannot stop thinking? Are we somehow more alive? Or have we mistaken the echo of our thoughts for the essence of our existence? Eastern philosophy offers a quiet rebuttal. Thinking is not being. It is merely one aspect of being, like waves upon the ocean. The water remains beneath, vast and still, no matter how wild the surface becomes. Modern neuroscience gives us a biological lens into this phenomenon. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for planning, analyzing, and decision-making, is what allows us to think abstractly and anticipate the future. It's the reason we can build cities, solve equations, and plan entire lifetimes. But it's also the reason we can lie awake at night replaying a single conversation from years ago or rehearsing scenarios that will never happen. The same mechanism that enables creativity can just as easily create suffering. When the mind grows restless, it mistakes mental activity for control. Each new thought feels like a step closer to certainty. Yet, certainty never arrives. This illusion keeps us trapped in motion, like a hamster running endlessly within its wheel. We convince ourselves that the next thought, the next conclusion, will finally bring peace. But thought is not the same as awareness. Thought belongs to the mind. Awareness belongs to the self beneath it. Consider the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius, who spent his nights in contemplation rather than consumption of endless thoughts. In his writings, meditations, he reminds himself to return again and again to what is essential. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Overthinking is the forgetting of that power. It is the confusion of inner mastery with external control. To overthink is to build towers of logic upon shifting sand, to construct elaborate explanations for feelings that might never need to be explained. The human mind loves patterns. It seeks causality in everything. We are not content to let a mystery remain unsolved. So we dissect emotions, motives, and experiences, trying to find a reason for every flicker of discomfort. In that search, the mind begins to devour itself. It analyzes its own analysis, doubts its own conclusions, and finds endless fuel for self-scrutiny. But not all thinking is overthinking. There is a form of thought that is creative, alive, and clear. This kind of thought flows naturally, like a river following its course. It emerges from stillness rather than agitation. You can sense the difference. One arises from fear and the need for certainty, the other from curiosity and peace. The first contracts, the second expands. Cognitive scientists call this difference metacognition, the awareness of thought itself. When you can observe your mind without being swept away by it, thinking regains its proper place. It becomes a servant once more, not a master. You might notice a worry forming, a memory resurfacing, or a fantasy playing out, and simply say, "There is a thought." The act of naming it lightly disarms it. Like watching clouds drift across the sky, you realize you are not the weather. You are the space through which it moves. The Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh described this presence beautifully. Feelings come and go like clouds in a windy sky. Conscious breathing is my anchor. To watch thought without judgment is not passivity, it is mastery. The mind will continue to think, but you no longer mistake its movement for truth. In our modern age, the challenge has grown louder. Technology amplifies thought, rewarding our attention with endless stimulation. Every scroll, every notification, every update trains the brain to stay in motion. Silence becomes uncomfortable. Stillness feels unnatural. But the human psyche is not designed for constant input. Just as the body needs rest to repair itself, the mind needs stillness to remember what it truly is. So, what happens when the mind becomes the master? We lose perspective. Our world shrinks to the size of our thoughts. We forget that there is life beyond them, the rustle of leaves outside the window, the breath filling our lungs, the sensation of being here now. The mind that was meant to interpret reality becomes a filter that obscures it. But when awareness returns, even for a moment, the balance shifts. Thought becomes what it was always meant to be, a servant of consciousness, not its ruler. To find the way out of overthinking, we must not fight the mind, but learn to see it clearly. We must learn to recognize the patterns that pull us into endless analysis, to notice when we've mistaken thinking for understanding. This clarity is not achieved through more thinking. It is found through awareness. The next time you catch yourself lost in thought, pause. Feel the weight of your body, the rhythm of your breath, the quiet presence beneath the mental noise. That stillness is your true nature. It is the space in which every thought arises and dissolves. And in that recognition, the mind begins to bow. It remembers its rightful place, not as master, but as messenger. Awareness takes the throne once again. The causes of overthinking: fear, control, and the illusion of safety. Every habit of the mind has its roots in emotion. Overthinking, though it may appear intellectual, is rarely born from reason. It is an emotional strategy disguised as logic. Beneath its constant chatter lies fear. Fear of uncertainty, fear of failure, fear of loss, and perhaps, most of all, fear of surrendering control. To understand the causes of overthinking, we must descend from the realm of thoughts into the depths of feeling, where the true motives of the mind reside. At its heart, overthinking is an attempt to find safety in knowledge. The mind tells itself that if it can think through every possibility, if it can anticipate every outcome, it will be prepared. It will be safe. This is an ancient instinct. Long before humans built cities or wrote books, our ancestors relied on anticipation to survive. The rustle in the grass might have been the wind or a predator. The mind that overanalyzed, that imagined danger where there might be none, had a better chance of surviving. But in our modern world, where the threats are no longer tigers in the dark, but emails, deadlines, and uncertain futures, this instinct turns inward. It becomes anxiety. The Stoics understood this tension between fear and control better than most. Epictetus taught that there are two categories of things: those within our control and those beyond it. Our suffering, he said, arises when we confuse the two. Overthinking is that confusion embodied. It is the mind's futile attempt to extend its reach into the uncontrollable. We analyze, replay, and predict as if sheer mental effort could bend reality to our will. When things don't go as we imagined, we blame ourselves for not thinking hard enough. Perfectionism often fuels this illusion. The perfectionist believes that the right decision, the perfect plan, or the ideal solution exists somewhere out there. if only they can think long enough to find it. But perfectionism is just fear wearing a mask. It is the fear of being wrong, of being judged, of not being enough. To overthink is to cling to the fantasy that there exists a version of life so precise, so perfectly executed, that it will shield us from pain. Existential philosophy offers a different lens. Jean-Paul Sartre wrote of the burden of freedom, that terrifying realization that we are responsible for our choices and that no one else can decide for us. Overthinking is, in many ways, an escape from that freedom. We linger in thought to avoid the vulnerability of action. If we stay in the mind long enough, we never have to risk failure. Sartre would call this bad faith, the refusal to accept our own freedom by hiding behind excuses and endless deliberation. Then, there is the fear of uncertainty, the most universal of all. Human beings crave predictability. Our nervous system finds comfort in routine, in patterns, in things we can anticipate. Uncertainty, by contrast, feels like standing on the edge of a cliff in the dark. The mind, desperate for footing, starts constructing narratives to fill the void. What if I fail? What if I am rejected? What if it all falls apart? Each question becomes a brick in the fortress of overthinking, built to protect us from the unknown. But that fortress quickly becomes a prison. In trying to control uncertainty, we imprison ourselves within fear. The Buddhist teachings describe this as tanha, craving, the grasping after what we cannot hold. We crave certainty, approval, permanence. But life, by its very nature, offers none of these. The more tightly we cling to them in thought, the more we suffer. Non-attachment, in this sense, is not indifference but freedom. It is the ability to meet life as it is, without demanding that it be otherwise. In modern psychology, these same patterns are recognized in the cycle of rumination. When faced with uncertainty or distress, the brain loops through scenarios, hoping to find resolution. Each thought triggers an emotion. That emotion triggers another thought, and the cycle continues. Neuroscientists have traced this loop to the brain's default mode network, the system active when the mind is not focused on the external world. In moderation, this network helps us reflect, plan, and learn. But in overdrive, it becomes a hall of mirrors, where every reflection amplifies fear. Social conditioning also plays its part. From childhood, many of us are taught that intelligence equals worth. We are praised for thinking, analyzing, planning, and solving. Rarely are we praised for stillness, for trust, for simply being. So we grow into adults who believe that constant thinking is a sign of responsibility. We mistake mental exhaustion for diligence. The world rewards the overthinker with approval until that approval becomes a trap. And then there is trauma, the silent root beneath many forms of mental unrest. When something painful happens and we cannot process it fully, the mind returns to it repeatedly, trying to rewrite the past. Overthinking becomes a form of emotional control, a way to manage pain through analysis. If I can understand why it happened, we tell ourselves, I can make sure it never happens again. But pain cannot be solved by thought alone. Healing requires feeling, something the overactive mind resists at all costs. Perhaps the most deceptive cause of overthinking is love, the desire to protect those we care about. We worry about their choices, their futures, their well-being. We imagine that if we can think through every possibility, we can keep them safe. But love, like life, cannot be managed through thought. To love fully is to accept vulnerability, to embrace the unknown with open arms. So, if overthinking grows from fear and the illusion of control, what frees us from it? Awareness, the simple, quiet acknowledgement, I am thinking. When you can see the mind's movements without becoming entangled in them, you begin to loosen their grip. You realize that thought is not control. It is a wave passing through the ocean of awareness. And fear, no matter how convincing, is only a guest. To find peace, we must learn to sit with uncertainty, to trust that we can face what comes without rehearsing every possibility. This trust is not blind optimism. It is wisdom. It is knowing that life, in all its unpredictability, unfolds whether we think about it or not. When we learn to meet that unfolding with calm attention, the illusion of safety dissolves and true peace begins to take its place. In the next section, we will explore what happens when these patterns take hold, how thoughts spiral into anxiety, and why breaking that cycle requires not more thinking, but an entirely new way of relating to thought itself. The psychological cycle. How thoughts spiral into anxiety, overthinking does not happen all at once. It unfolds like a slow descent, a spiral that tightens the longer we stay in it. What begins as a single thought, a concern, a doubt, a moment of self-questioning, gradually becomes a storm of mental activity. The mind, believing it is protecting us, builds patterns so convincing that we mistake them for truth. But understanding how these cycles form gives us the power to interrupt them. To see the machinery of thought at work is the first step toward freedom. At the core of overthinking lies the process psychologists call rumination. Rumination is repetitive thinking about the causes, meanings, and consequences of distress. It feels productive, as if by replaying events or analyzing our feelings, we might extract an answer. Yet, in practice, rumination rarely leads to solutions. Instead, it amplifies negative emotion and distorts perspective. The same thought loops back again and again, carving deep grooves into the mind's landscape, until even small triggers can reignite the entire cycle. Neuroscience has mapped this cycle to a network of brain regions known as the default mode network, DMN. This network activates when our attention drifts away from the external world, when we daydream, reflect, or replay memories. In moderation, this system supports creativity and learning. But when anxiety or insecurity fuels it, the DMN becomes hyperactive, leading to constant self-referential thought. What did I say? What will they think? Why can't I stop worrying? The brain becomes a hall of mirrors, each reflection feeding the next. Anxiety and overthinking sustain each other in a feedback loop. Anxiety increases the urge to think. If I can understand this, I'll feel safe. But the more we think, the more uncertain we feel. Every imagined scenario births another question, another potential disaster. The nervous system reacts as if these imagined events were real, flooding the body with stress hormones. The heart races, the muscles tense, the breath quickens. The body prepares for danger, yet no danger ever arrives. This physiological tension confirms the mind's belief that something must be wrong, and so the cycle continues. In cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, this loop is often called the thought-emotion-behavior triangle. A thought triggers an emotion. That emotion drives a behavior. The behavior reinforces the original thought. Imagine you send a message to a friend and they don't reply. The thought arises, did I say something wrong? That thought sparks anxiety. The emotion urges you to reread your message, to analyze every word. This behavior strengthens the belief that something is indeed wrong, even though no evidence supports it. Soon, you're trapped in a self-fulfilling cycle of worry. Overthinking often disguises itself as self-protection. We replay conversations to avoid social rejection, analyze decisions to prevent regret, and imagine worst-case scenarios to prepare for pain. But this preparation comes at a cost. The mind begins to equate thinking with control, and silence feels unsafe. The absence of thought becomes unfamiliar, almost threatening, because it represents vulnerability. In this way, anxiety teaches the mind to fear its own stillness. Carl Jung once observed that what you resist not only persists, but grows in size. When we resist uncertainty by overanalyzing it, we feed the very anxiety we wish to escape. The mind, like a frightened child, seeks reassurance. Each new thought is an attempt to soothe that fear, but reassurance found in thinking is fleeting. The momentary relief fades and the mind demands another answer. The cycle of dependence begins. The mind uses thought to escape discomfort, but thought is the source of that discomfort. Memory and imagination also play key roles in this spiral. The human brain cannot always distinguish between what is happening now and what is being vividly imagined. When we recall a painful memory or anticipate a future threat, the same neural circuits light up as if the event were occurring in real time. This means that every moment spent reliving the past or predicting the future has real emotional consequences. We literally feel the fear, guilt, or shame we are thinking about. Over time, these repeated activations train the nervous system into a chronic state of alertness. This is why overthinking feels exhausting. It is not just mental fatigue, it is physical. The body carries every thought as tension. Shoulders tighten, breathing shallows, sleep grows restless. The overactive mind keeps the body trapped in fight or flight, a mode designed for short bursts of survival, not for days or years of chronic worry. Eventually, even small triggers can activate the entire response. This is how anxiety generalizes, how one thought can become a way of life. Breaking this cycle requires interrupting the loop between thought and emotion. The first step is awareness, recognizing when the spiral begins. Awareness introduces a pause, a moment of separation between the thinker and the thought. In that pause, the cycle loses momentum. The next step is grounding, returning attention to the body and the present moment. Simple practices like feeling the breath, noticing the sensation of your hands, or listening to the sounds around you anchor you back in reality. These acts may seem small, but they remind the brain that safety exists here, now, not as in imagined futures. Mindfulness researchers like Jon Kabat-Zinn describe this as stepping out of the stream of thought. You don't stop the water from flowing, you simply step onto the riverbank and watch. The current still moves, but you are no longer swept away. Each time you practice this, you strengthen the neural pathways of awareness. Gradually, the mind learns that stillness is not dangerous. It is healing. There is also the practice of reframing. When you notice repetitive thoughts, you can ask gentle questions. Is this thought helpful? Is it true? What am I trying to protect myself from? Such inquiry shifts the focus from content to process, from what you are thinking to why. This metacognitive awareness transforms rumination into reflection. You are no longer lost inside the thought. You are observing it from the outside. The Stoics, centuries before modern psychology, taught a similar practice. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." When you begin to observe your mental patterns, you reclaim that power. The mind's momentum slows, and the space between thought and reaction widens. In that space lies choice. You can choose to breathe instead of analyze, to act instead of delay, to rest instead of resist. Overthinking thrives in darkness. It feeds on unexamined fear. But once illuminated by awareness, its power begins to fade. Each time you witness a thought without clinging to it, you weaken the cycle that binds you, the spiral loosens, and beneath it you find a stillness that was never lost, only overlooked. In the next section, we will explore how philosophy itself, particularly Stoicism and Buddhism, offers a timeless cure for the restless mind. There, we'll see how both traditions teach not the elimination of thought, but the art of seeing through it until only peace remains. The philosophical insights, the Stoic and Buddhist cure for the restless mind. When the mind is caught in the storm of overthinking, philosophy offers shelter, not by suppressing thought, but by transforming our relationship with it. Two traditions in particular, Stoicism and Buddhism, though born worlds apart, converge on the same insight. Peace is not found in controlling life's chaos, but in accepting the limits of control itself. Both traditions invite us to turn inward, to cultivate a steady mind, even as the world shifts around us. The Stoics, born in the marketplaces and courtyards of ancient Greece and Rome, were not detached mystics. They were pragmatic thinkers who lived in a world as unpredictable as our own. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire amid war and plague. Epictetus was born into slavery, his freedom and security never guaranteed. Seneca wrote his most profound letters while facing political exile and eventual execution. Yet, through all of this, they discovered an enduring truth. Suffering is not caused by events, but by our judgments about them. Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. These words, simple and direct, hold the key to escaping the grip of overthinking. When we worry, we attempt to rewrite reality in our minds, imagining better outcomes or replaying the past in search of control. The Stoic instead asks, what is within my control right now? If the answer is nothing, then thinking endlessly about it only deepens suffering. If something is within our control, our attitude, our effort, our choices, then we act with calm purpose. All else, we release. This distinction between the controllable and the uncontrollable is known as the dichotomy of control. It is deceptively simple but profoundly liberating. When you find yourself lost in thought, pause and ask, is this within my power to change? If not, the Stoic answer is surrender, not as defeat, but as wisdom. The act of releasing what cannot be controlled reclaims the energy once wasted on worry. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily. His private journals, now known as meditations, are filled with reminders to himself to meet adversity with reason, to remain grounded in the present, and to view each obstacle as an opportunity for virtue. He wrote, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but your estimate of it. And this, you have the power to revoke at any moment. Overthinking thrives on reaction. It feeds on our attempts to mentally fight what is already unfolding. The Stoic method dissolves this tension by shifting our perspective from resistance to acceptance. Life, they remind us, is neither good nor bad. It simply is. Our peace depends on our interpretation. By cultivating equanimity, the mind grows resilient, not by escaping challenges, but by meeting them with composure. While Stoicism trains the intellect to discern what is within our control, Buddhism invites the heart to let go of attachment altogether. Where the Stoic emphasizes clarity of judgment, the Buddhist emphasizes openness of awareness. Both arrive at the same destination: freedom from unnecessary suffering. The Buddha taught that craving, our desperate grasping for permanence in an impermanent world, is the root of all suffering. When we overthink, we are caught in craving's net, craving certainty, craving understanding, craving safety. We replay scenarios because we long to control outcomes, We cling to ideas and identities because they give us a fleeting sense of stability. But the harder we grasp, the more fragile peace becomes. The Buddhist path, therefore, is one of release, learning to loosen the grip of the mind. Mindfulness, the cornerstone of Buddhist practice, offers a direct antidote to overthinking. To be mindful is to observe thought without judgment or attachment, to see it as passing phenomena rather than personal truth. Imagine sitting beside a river watching the water flow. Thoughts are the ripples on the surface. They come, they go, and the river remains. You do not have to chase every ripple or analyze its pattern. You can simply watch, and in that watching, you find stillness. This is not passivity, it is presence. When you observe the mind rather than identify with it, its storms lose their power. You realize that you are not the voice in your head. You are the awareness that hears it. This awareness is untouched by fear, doubt, or desire. It is the still center around which all thoughts revolve. Thich Nhat Hanh, the beloved Zen master, described this presence beautifully. Feelings come and go like clouds in a windy sky. Conscious breathing is my anchor. Breath becomes the bridge between body and mind. Each inhalation grounds you in the present. Each exhalation releases what no longer serves you. When the mind races, returning to the breath is a return to sanity. The breath does not argue, analyze, or predict. It simply is. And in its simplicity lies wisdom. Buddhism also teaches the principle of non-self, the idea that what we call I is not a fixed entity but a flowing process. Our thoughts, emotions, and perceptions arise and dissolve like waves. Overthinking often springs from the illusion of a solid self, a self that must protect, defend, or perfect itself. But when we see that this self is fluid and ever-changing, the compulsion to control fades. There is no permanent I to fix, only a field of awareness to witness. In practice, the Stoic and Buddhist approaches complement each other. Stoicism refines the intellect. Buddhism softens the heart. Together, they teach that freedom from overthinking is not found in silence, but in balance. The Stoic pauses to ask, "Is this within my control?" The Buddhist breathes and lets it pass. One acts with clarity, the other rests in acceptance. Both remind us that peace is an inner posture, not a condition of the today's world. To live these teachings is to cultivate an inner refuge, an unshakable calm that remains even as thoughts come and go. The Stoic stands firm like a mountain. The Buddhist flows like a stream. Between the two, we find harmony, grounded, steady, and open. The mind, once restless and overburdened, begins to remember its original stillness. As you practice these philosophies in daily life, you may notice that moments of peace arise not because your thoughts have disappeared, but because you no longer believe every thought that appears. You begin to trust in the rhythm of life itself. You understand that thinking, like breathing, has its place, but it is not the whole of who you are. In the next section, we'll explore a deeper dimension of this journey, the existential perspective, where thinkers like Heidegger, Sartre, and Viktor Frankl reveal how overthinking can be an escape from being and how reclaiming presence transforms the very meaning of existence. The existential view, thinking as avoidance of being. Overthinking is not merely a mental habit, it is a form of existential avoidance. Beneath the swirl of thoughts, there often hides a deeper fear, the fear of being. To sit in silence, to face oneself without distraction, can feel unbearable. The mind resists this confrontation by filling the space with noise. It builds intricate webs of logic and speculation to escape the raw immediacy of existence. This, the existential philosophers remind us, is the modern human condition. Martin Heidegger, one of the great thinkers of the 20th century, described this predicament as thrownness, the realization that we are thrust into a world not of our choosing. We awaken to life already in motion, surrounded by expectations, routines, and demands. This awareness, if unexamined, leads to what he called angst, a formless anxiety born not from any specific threat, but from the sheer weight of existence itself. Overthinking is often the mind's attempt to tame this vastness, to impose order upon the uncontrollable mystery of being alive. Jean-Paul Sartre, another voice of existential insight, went further. He argued that overthinking can serve as an escape from freedom. Freedom, in his view, is both our greatest gift and our greatest burden. We are free to choose, but that freedom also means we are responsible for what we become. Faced with this responsibility, many retreat into thought. We analyze, justify, and rationalize instead of deciding. We remain trapped in what Sartre called bad faith, the refusal to act authentically because action requires courage. In this sense, overthinking is a shield against the unknown. By thinking endlessly, we postpone the moment of choice. We dwell in possibilities rather than realities. We prefer the comfort of hypothetical futures to the vulnerability of the present. Yet the irony is that the more we think, the further we drift from the only place where life truly happens, here and now. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and survivor of the Holocaust, understood this dynamic from a different angle. In the depths of suffering, he discovered that meaning, not certainty, is what sustains the human spirit. Those who have a why to live, he wrote, can bear almost anyhow. Overthinking, by contrast, is often the mind's search for a how without a why. It is an effort to control the mechanics of life while ignoring its purpose. When meaning is absent, the mind fills the void with analysis. But meaning cannot be found through thought alone. It must be lived. Existential psychology expands on this idea. When individuals are disconnected from their sense of purpose, they experience what is called existential vacuum, a state of inner emptiness that manifests as boredom, restlessness, or obsessive rumination. The mind, uncomfortable with this emptiness, compensates by thinking incessantly. But the cure is not more thought. It is engagement with life itself. When we act in alignment with our values, the compulsion to overanalyze begins to fade. Overthinking is the intellectualization of fear. It is the ego's way of avoiding vulnerability by staying in the safety of abstraction. The mind says, if I can understand everything, I won't have to feel. But life demands that we feel, that we risk, love, and lose. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, "Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final." This invitation is the antidote to overthinking. To live fully is to embrace uncertainty, to let experience shape us without demanding guarantees. The existentialists teach us that thinking and being are not the same. Thinking is a movement within consciousness. Being is consciousness itself. When thought dominates, we live at one remove from reality. We experience life through the filter of interpretation rather than directly. But when we allow thought to fall silent, even for a moment, being shines through. We feel the texture of existence, the breath entering our lungs, the light shifting across the room, the pulse of life that requires no explanation. To move beyond overthinking, we must make peace with not knowing. This is perhaps the hardest lesson. The human mind equates knowledge with safety, but existential wisdom suggests the opposite, that true freedom lies in uncertainty. When we accept that life is inherently unpredictable, we stop demanding that thought provide answers it cannot give. We begin to live, as Kierkegaard wrote, by faith, not blind belief, but a willingness to act without absolute certainty. To live this way requires courage. It means embracing existence as it is, messy, fleeting, imperfect. It means allowing joy and sorrow to coexist without trying to control their rhythm. The overthinker seeks to eliminate pain by anticipating it, but in doing so also numbs the possibility of wonder. To think less is not to become careless. It is to become more alive. Existential philosophy does not promise comfort. It offers something deeper: authenticity. When you stop overthinking, you begin to experience life directly. You see that the world is not a puzzle to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. You realize that you are not a fixed identity, but a process of becoming. Every choice, every moment of awareness reshapes who you are. This is the paradox of overthinking. It feels like a search for truth, yet it keeps us from the truth of our own presence. Thought in excess becomes a veil that separates us from the raw immediacy of life. But when we dare to let go, when we allow silence to speak, we rediscover what it means to simply be. In the next section, we will step beyond philosophy and psychology into the realm of the spiritual. There, we'll explore the idea of surrender, not as resignation, but as transcendence, and discover how stillness reveals the self that exists beyond thought altogether. The spiritual dimension, surrender, stillness, and the self beyond thought. When the mind has exhausted every explanation and still finds no peace, it begins to whisper a quiet truth. Perhaps the way out is not through thought at all. This realization marks the beginning of the spiritual journey, the point where intellect bows to awareness and surrender becomes the only door left open. For centuries, mystics and spiritual teachers have spoken of a state beyond the noise of the mind, a silence that is not emptiness but presence. This is not a new idea, yet it is rediscovered by every seeker who grows weary of the mental chase. Thought, for all its brilliance, cannot reach what lies beyond it. The mind can describe stillness, but never experience it directly. Stillness must be felt. Eckhart Tolle calls this shift the power of now. He teaches that the incessant mental activity we call overthinking is the ego's attempt to anchor itself in time, to cling to the past, or project into the future, because the present moment is fatal to the ego's existence. When we fully enter the now, the mind's grip loosens. The present moment, Tolle says, is not something to be achieved, but something that is always already here, waiting beneath the noise of thought. The mind resists this because it cannot dominate what it cannot define. The ancient sages of the Upanishads, thousands of years before, spoke of the same truth in different words. When the mind is still, they wrote, the self reveals itself. This self, the pure awareness that witnesses thought, is not something we create. It is what we already are. Overthinking, then, is not a problem to be solved, but a veil to be lifted. Beneath it, consciousness waits, unchanged, untouched, whole. In Taoist philosophy, Lao Tzu spoke of Wu Wei, the art of effortless action. He observed that water, though soft, can carve mountains simply by flowing in harmony with the Tao, the natural way of things. Overthinking, by contrast, is the attempt to force life into shape. It is the mind's struggle against what already is. To surrender in the spiritual sense is to return to flow, to trust that existence unfolds without needing our constant interference. Many resist the word surrender, equating it with passivity or defeat. But true surrender is not resignation, it is cooperation with reality. It is the recognition that life moves through us, not merely around us. When we surrender, we cease trying to control every current of experience and instead allow ourselves to float with it. The paradox is that in this letting go, we find a deeper power, a power not born of effort, but of alignment. Consider the ocean. Each wave rises, curls, and falls back into the sea. None of them resist their movement. None cling to their form. Overthinking is the wave's attempt to hold its shape forever, to remain separate from the vastness that gave it birth. But peace comes only when the wave remembers it is the ocean. Spiritual surrender also requires trust. Trust in life, in awareness, in the intelligence that beats your heart and grows the trees without your command. We forget this intelligence because the mind craves ownership. It believes that without constant control, everything will collapse. But look closely. The earth turns, the seasons change, the body breathes, all without your permission. The same intelligence that sustains the universe sustains you. The mind's control is a shadow. Life has been carrying you all along. The practice of stillness invites us to experience this truth directly. Begin simply. Sit in silence and close your eyes. Notice the breath as it enters and leaves the body. Do not try to control it. Feel the sensations in your chest, the rise and fall, the subtle rhythm that continues whether or not you pay attention. That is life moving through you. Each breath is a reminder that you are part of something vast and benevolent. At first, stillness may feel uncomfortable. The mind will protest. It will remind you of unfinished tasks, replay old conversations, or whisper that you are wasting time. This is natural. The mind's nature is movement. But beneath that movement lies a field of awareness that is always still. The practice is simply to return to that awareness each time you drift away. Eventually, you realize that awareness was never lost. Only your attention was. Mystics from every tradition describe this realization as awakening. The Sufi poet Rumi said, "Silence is the language of God. All else is poor translation." In silence, the mind finally surrenders its need to label and analyze. What remains is presence, vast, timeless, and clear. This presence is not indifferent. It is love itself. It sees without judgment, accepts without condition, and embraces all experience as part of itself. Overthinking dissolves in this presence because thought can no longer find traction. The mind may still produce ideas and memories, but they no longer carry weight. They pass through like birds crossing the sky. The more we rest in awareness, the lighter thought becomes, until it is no longer an obstacle but a dance, movement within stillness. This surrender does not make life easier in the conventional sense. Pain, loss, and uncertainty remain, but their meaning changes. You no longer suffer from them in the same way because you no longer believe they define you. You see them as waves on the surface of the ocean, real, yet temporary. Beneath them, the water remains calm. This is the heart of all spiritual teaching, to know yourself as the stillness beneath thought, the awareness behind emotion. When you touch that awareness even briefly, you discover a peace that does not depend on circumstances. It is not something you earn through achievement or effort. It is your natural state, obscured only by the noise of the mind. As you move through life, this realization becomes a refuge. You begin to notice that even amid the chaos of work, relationships, and uncertainty, A quiet presence remains untouched. The world can roar, but the stillness within you does not move. It watches, it witnesses, and it waits for you to remember. In the next section, we will translate this insight into practice. We'll explore tangible ways to unravel the mental knot, to integrate awareness into everyday life through mindfulness, journaling, and the gentle discipline of returning again and again to the present moment, where thought becomes still and being begins. The practice. Tools to unravel the mental knot. Understanding the roots of overthinking is one thing, loosening its hold is another. Knowledge opens the door, but practice walks you through it. True freedom from the restless mind requires more than insight. It requires integration. The following practices are not quick fixes, they are quiet disciplines. Ways of remembering that peace is already within you. Over time, these tools can transform your relationship with thought, helping you untangle the mental knots that keep you trapped in endless analysis. 1. Mindful awareness. Seeing thought as thought to the first and most essential practice is awareness itself. The ability to observe your thoughts without being consumed by them. Sit comfortably and allow your mind to do what it does naturally. You might notice a stream of commentary, memories, worries, or plans. Instead of following each one, watch them arise and pass away. Label them gently. Thinking, remembering, judging. This simple act breaks identification. You begin to see that the mind is not a solid thing but a series of passing movements. Neuroscience supports this. Studies on mindfulness meditation show that when people observe their thoughts rather than engage with them, activity in the brain's default mode network decreases. The chatter quiets and the sense of I am thinking transforms into thinking is happening. This shift, small as it may seem, is revolutionary. It turns the mind from master into messenger. Awareness is not concentration, it is openness. When thoughts arise, you do not push them away or cling to them. You simply allow them to be. With time, this practice reveals an astonishing truth. Thoughts do not require your participation to come and go. They move on their own, like clouds in the sky. You are the sky. 2. Conscious breathing, the anchor to the present. When the storm of overthinking grows intense, the simplest and most immediate refuge is the breath. Unlike the mind, which leaps between past and future, the breath always occurs in the present. It is a doorway back to now. Try this. Inhale slowly through the nose. Feel the air cool against the back of your throat and exhale gently through the mouth. Follow this rhythm for a few moments. As attention rests on the breath, thoughts begin to slow. The body remembers safety. In many traditions, the breath is seen as sacred. In Sanskrit, the word prana means both breath and life force. In Chinese philosophy, it is qi, the subtle energy that animates all things. Each inhalation reconnects you with the living pulse of the universe. Each exhalation releases tension and thought. Breathing consciously is not about control. It is about communion with the present moment. Whenever you notice yourself lost in thought, let the breath be your guide home. It requires no belief, no philosophy, only attention. 3. Grounding in the body. Returning to the senses. Overthinking pulls us into abstraction, away from the immediacy of the body. To counter this, we practice grounding. Start by feeling your feet on the floor. Notice the pressure, the temperature, the texture of the surface beneath you. Then, bring attention to your hands, how they rest, their warmth, their weight. The more you inhabit the body, the quieter the mind becomes. Sensation pulls awareness out of the spiral of thought and back into the living moment. Try this throughout the day. When you catch yourself drifting into analysis, pause. Feel your breath. Feel your feet. Feel the contact between your body and the world. This is the language of presence. The body never overthinks. It simply is. 4. Journaling. Untangling the mind on paper writing is one of the most effective ways to externalize thought. When we write our thoughts down, they lose their grip on the mind's stage. Begin by setting aside a few minutes each day to journal freely. Do not censor or edit yourself. Let the words flow as they wish. Over time, patterns emerge. Recurring fears, desires, or questions. Seeing them in ink helps you recognize how repetitive much of your thinking is. Once these patterns become visible, you can engage them with compassion and curiosity. Ask, is this thought true? Is it useful? What emotion lies beneath it? The goal is not to fix every problem, but to understand your own mental landscape. Journaling turns the storm into a map, one you can read instead of being lost within. 5. The art of pausing, creating space before response. Overthinkers often react impulsively, not outwardly but inwardly. A thought arises, and the mind immediately dives in to analyze, defend, or argue. The practice of pausing interrupts this reflex. Each time a thought arises, pause for just a moment before responding. Take a breath. Notice the space between stimulus and reaction. In that pause lies your freedom. Viktor Frankl captured this beautifully. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. The more you practice pausing, the more that space expands. Eventually, you realize that awareness itself is the space, the still, vast backdrop behind every thought and emotion. 6. Cognitive reframing, transforming the lens. Overthinking often stems from distorted thinking patterns, catastrophizing, perfectionism, or black and white reasoning. Cognitive reframing, a technique from modern psychology, helps you see situations through a clearer lens. When a thought feels heavy or repetitive, ask, is there another way to view this? For instance, I failed can become, I learned something valuable. This is unbearable can become, this is difficult, but I can face it. Reframing is not about denial, it is about truthfulness. It reminds you that reality is not fixed, but shaped by perception. The Stoics called this the discipline of perception. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed and you haven't been. 7. The practice of acceptance, letting life be as it is. Acceptance is not passivity. It is the willingness to meet life without resistance. When you stop demanding that things be different, you free enormous mental energy. This does not mean liking everything that happens, but acknowledging that it is happening. From that foundation, wise action can arise. To practice acceptance, begin with small things. When stuck in traffic, instead of fighting reality with irritation, notice the sensations in your body, the sound of the engine, the movement of breath. These moments are not interruptions to life. They are life. Acceptance transforms even difficulty into a teacher. 8. The discipline of stillness, sitting in silence. Each day, set aside time each day for silence. Even 5 minutes is enough to begin. Sit comfortably, close your eyes and do nothing. Let the mind wander if it must, but do not follow. Imagine yourself sitting by a lake. At first, the surface is disturbed, rippling with every thought. But if you remain still, the water settles and beneath the surface, you begin to see clearly. This stillness reveals not emptiness, but depth. Consistency matters more than duration. Over time, this simple practice rewires the nervous system. The body learns calm, the mind learns trust. Stillness ceases to be an effort. It becomes a refuge. 9. Living consciously. Integrating awareness into daily life. The final step is to bring these practices into everyday living. Awareness is not confined to meditation cushions or quiet rooms. It belongs in the heartbeat of ordinary moments. Washing dishes, walking through a crowded street, listening to a friend. When you remember to return to the present, thought naturally softens. Try this. When doing something simple, give it your full attention. Feel the temperature of the water as you wash your hands. Listen to the rhythm of your footsteps. Notice the pause before you speak. Each act of attention grounds you in being. Each moment lived consciously weakens the habit of overthinking. The gentle reminder: you will not stop thinking overnight. The mind's momentum is ancient and it slows gradually. There will be days when the chatter returns in full force. When it does, do not despair. Simply notice it, breathe, and begin again. Every return to awareness is progress. Every moment of noticing is victory. The way out of overthinking is not through force, but through gentleness. It is the steady practice of remembering who you are beneath the noise. A consciousness vast enough to hold every thought and still remain untouched. In the next section, we will explore how to embody this understanding in daily life, how to live lightly, moving with the flow of existence, unburdened by the need to control every outcome, and free to experience life as it unfolds moment by moment. Living lightly, returning to the flow of life. As the fog of constant thought begins to lift, life reveals a quieter rhythm, one that was never lost, only obscured. This rhythm is not something you create through discipline or desire. It is the natural flow of being. To live lightly is to rediscover that flow, to move through the world without the constant weight of mental resistance. It does not mean ignoring responsibility or detaching from life, but rather engaging with it more fully, more fluidly, and with less friction. When overthinking governed your days, every moment carried the heaviness of self-evaluation. You might have questioned every word spoken, replayed every decision, or judged yourself for every emotion that arose. Living lightly is the opposite of this. It is not carelessness, it is care without burden. It is attention without anxiety, participation without control. In the Taoist tradition, this state is called Wu Wei, often translated as effortless action. Lao Tzu described it as the art of moving in harmony with life's unfolding rather than against it. Imagine a leaf floating down a stream. It does not resist the current or question its direction, it simply flows. This image captures the essence of living lightly. When the mind ceases to argue with the moment, life moves through you effortlessly. Living lightly begins with trust. You trust that you do not need to think everything into existence. You trust that you can meet each moment as it comes. This trust is not naive. It is grounded in direct experience. You have seen that overthinking does not grant control. It only creates tension. Through practice, you learn that awareness, not analysis, is your true strength. When you trust life, you begin to act with spontaneity. The need to calculate every possibility softens. Decisions arise naturally, without the mental debate that once exhausted you. You speak more freely, listen more deeply, and notice that intuition often provides answers faster and more accurately than overanalysis ever could. This is not mystical, it is psychological. When the mind is calm, the brain's creative and intuitive networks communicate more effectively. Insight arises without strain. Living lightly also means embracing imperfection. Overthinking thrives on the fantasy of flawless outcomes. It whispers that if you think long enough, you can avoid mistakes, pain, or regret. But life is not a puzzle to be solved. It is a dance to be experienced. Every misstep, every uncertainty is part of the choreography. When you stop demanding perfection, you allow space for growth, surprise, and joy. The Stoics understood this as amorphati, the love of fate. To love fate is not to resign yourself to passivity, but to meet whatever arises with acceptance and gratitude. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." The one who lives lightly becomes that fire, transforming obstacles into fuel for presence. When plans collapse or people disappoint, the mind may still react, but awareness quickly restores balance. You no longer drown in resistance, you float upon it. In daily life, living lightly means moving from effort to ease. You still plan, work, and strive, but without the inner tension that once accompanied every task. You begin to sense when thought is necessary and when it is merely habitual. You trust that clarity emerges from stillness, not strain. Even challenges become invitations to practice this balance. Consider moments of stress, delays, mistakes, or misunderstandings. The overthinking mind rushes in, trying to control, defend, or fix. Living lightly means pausing before reacting. You take a breath, sense the body, and remember that you are not the chaos of your thoughts. From this space, responses become wiser, gentler, and more effective. Paradoxically, the less you force, the more smoothly things unfold. Creativity flourishes in this lightness. When the mind relaxes, ideas flow like water. The same energy once trapped in worry now fuels inspiration. Artists, writers, and inventors throughout history have described this experience, the moment when effort dissolves and creation seems to happen on its own. This is the natural intelligence of life expressing itself through you. To live lightly is to trust this intelligence. Relationships also transform under this lightness. When you are no longer preoccupied with self-critique or mental rehearsal, you can truly listen. You engage with others not through the filter of expectation, but through genuine presence. Conversations deepen, misunderstandings lessen, and love, whether romantic or platonic, becomes less about needing and more about sharing. Overthinking contracts. Presence expands. Living lightly does not mean living without thought. Thought remains a valuable tool, but you learn to use it as needed and then set it down, like a craftsman laying aside a tool after the work is done. When thought is finished, silence continues the task. This silence is not emptiness. It is the fertile ground of awareness from which all clarity arises. One of the most profound shifts that occur when you live lightly is the rediscovery of wonder. The simplest moments, sunlight on water, laughter shared with a friend, the sound of rain, regain their brilliance. You notice that life was never dull. It was only obscured by the fog of constant thinking. When the mind grows quiet, the world glows again. This return to wonder is not childish but wise. It is the wisdom of someone who has looked into the complexity of the mind and chosen simplicity. Living lightly is an act of maturity, not escapism. It is the realization that peace was never something to be earned. It was always the natural state beneath the noise. You will still think, plan, and occasionally fall back into old patterns. That is human. But now, each time you notice yourself lost in thought, you also know the way back. A breath, a moment of stillness, a quiet smile, and the grip of overthinking dissolves. You find yourself once again in the flow of life, where everything moves effortlessly. In the next and final section, we will rest in that flow. We will explore how the quiet mind opens the heart, how the end of overthinking is not emptiness, but fullness, a deep and enduring connection with all that is. Section 10. the quiet mind, and the open heart. There comes a moment after the long journey through the corridors of thought when the mind finally grows quiet. Not because it has found all the answers, but because it no longer needs them. In this quiet, something ancient and tender awakens, a soft awareness that does not analyze or strive. It simply is. This is the heart of freedom, the still mind and the open heart moving together in harmony. When you reach this point, it is not the end of thought, but the beginning of wisdom. Thought still arises, but it no longer commands your life. It comes as a whisper, not a storm. You recognize its voice, use it when needed, and let it go when it has served its purpose. The silence that remains is not empty. It is alive, vibrant, and compassionate. A quiet mind is not detached from the world. It is deeply connected to it. Without the constant veil of mental commentary, the senses awaken. You notice the warmth of sunlight, the sound of the wind, the rhythm of your breath. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. What was once overlooked now glows with meaning. The world, which seemed chaotic and hostile when filtered through worry, reveals its quiet order. Life was never against you, it was only waiting for you to stop resisting. In this stillness, the heart naturally opens. Love, once tangled in expectation and fear, becomes effortless. Compassion arises not as a moral duty, but as a spontaneous expression of understanding. You see others not as obstacles or reflections of your own insecurities, but as fellow travelers, each struggling, each searching, each worthy of kindness. The overthinking mind builds walls. The open heart dissolves them. The quiet mind allows for a deeper kind of listening. You begin to hear the subtle rhythms of intuition, the quiet guidance that speaks not in words, but in feeling. Decisions made from this space carry clarity and grace. They are not born of anxiety, but of alignment. You stop forcing outcomes and start participating in the natural intelligence of life. This is not a state you must maintain through effort. The harder you try to stay calm, the more elusive peace becomes. True stillness arises when effort falls away. It is not something you achieve. It is something you remember. You have always been this awareness, vast, steady, and free. The waves of thought come and go, but the ocean beneath remains unchanged. To live with a quiet mind and open heart is to see that life does not need to be controlled. It needs to be experienced. Every joy, every sorrow, every uncertainty is part of a greater unfolding. You no longer measure your worth by your thoughts or accomplishments. You measure it by your capacity to be present, to love, to allow. From this place, gratitude blooms naturally. You begin to thank life not just for the moments of beauty, but for the challenges that brought you here. You see how every struggle, every sleepless night, every spiral of overthinking was not a detour, but the path itself, a necessary awakening. The mind had to exhaust its search so that awareness could emerge. And now, as you breathe in this stillness, you understand that peace was never somewhere else. It was never hidden in success or knowledge or control. It was here in this breath, in this moment, waiting quietly behind every thought you ever had. When you rest in this awareness, even for a few seconds, you touch eternity. Time slows. The boundaries between self and world soften, and what remains is simple presence, the gentle hum of existence itself. You no longer chase meaning. You are meaning. You no longer seek peace. You are peace. This is the way out of overthinking, not by silencing the mind, but by awakening the awareness that watches it. The thoughts continue, but they no longer bind you. You are the sky, vast and unshaken, and thoughts are merely clouds passing through. So tonight, as you lie in bed and the world grows quiet, let your thoughts drift as they will. Do not chase them. Do not fight them. Let them rise and fall like waves, returning to the sea. Feel the weight of your body resting on the earth, the rhythm of your breath carrying you home. There is nothing to fix, nothing to control, nothing to understand. There is only this moment, and in this moment, everything is enough. And when you wake tomorrow, may you carry this stillness into the world. May you walk with lightness, speak with kindness, and meet each moment with openness. For a quiet mind is not the end of thought, but the beginning of love. And an open heart is not a destination, but a way of being. Thank you for taking this journey, one of awareness, courage, and return. If this exploration brought you even a moment of peace, let that peace ripple outward. Share it, live it, breathe it. And as you do, remember to subscribe, to like, and to return whenever you wish to rest again in wisdom's quiet. Here the noise fades. Here the overthinking ends. Here you are home.